Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Before we start, can we do a sound check? Can all of you hear me? Okay, great. So some reminders before we start. Everyone will be put on mute during the session so that we won't distract or disturb other people. As you can see on your screen, we have a chat box, so you can type in your question anytime during the session. Please address your questions in the chat box to all organizers. I have with me Ivy, and she's a co-organizer who will be monitoring your questions in the chat box. I'll take some comments and questions in the end, or as I see them, I will try to reply to them. So feel free to type in your questions, or if you have some opinions or thoughts, just feel free to type in. We'll be able to see it. We'll share the slides with you 1 hour after the session, so you can just you do not need to copy the notes, and this webinar will take about 30 minutes. Okay, so today's topic is about the hiring manager in recruitment and recruitment. So this webinar is designed with a hiring manager in mind, where we share some of the common situations in today's recruitment process. And hopefully at the end of the webinar, both the hiring manager and the HR we will see each other's perspective better, and as a result collaborate better to hire faster and hire the best talent for your company. So if you are a HR or a recruiter, we applaud you for taking an interest to see things from a hiring manager's point of view. And if we have hiring managers joining today, congrats, because you have taken a very important first step to really understand recruitment, and your HR is quite lucky to have you. So maybe can I get you to type in the chat box and let me know whether you are a hiring manager or a HR or a recruiter. Okay, you can type into the chat box to all organizers. Okay, we have some HR, recruiter, great. Okay, keep typing. Okay, so it seems like we have quite a number of recruiters and HR today. Okay, my name is Jocelyn, and I'm a customer solution specialist with JobStreet.com. So I deal with recruiters or HR managers on a daily basis to understand their sourcing needs, and I work with them to understand the challenges that they're facing, and work together to come up with a solution to solve the problem or to improve the situation. So one of the most common challenges shared by HR or recruiters is that the collaboration between hiring managers and between HR and the hiring manager in the screening process. So usually in this process, there should be a lot of communication going on, and most of the time this process is pretty challenging because sometimes the hiring manager doesn't quite see the HR's perspective, or maybe the HR doesn't quite understand what the hiring manager wants, right? So for example, HR would try very hard to source for good candidates, but sometimes, the resumes get rejected over and over again by the hiring manager. And when that happens, HR has no choice but to source for more and more candidates, right? So I'm sure you are familiar with this scenario. So in today's recruitment, hiring manager is often a key player in the process. Yet we always find that the communication between the hiring manager and the HR is always just reduced to a piece of paper with job description on it. In organizations where both the hiring manager and the HR can work hand in hand, we find that the effectiveness and efficiency of the whole recruitment process becomes faster and better. we'll be looking at top 5 challenges of recruitment, top 5 common challenges of recruitment involving hiring managers and how you as a hiring manager can add value to the recruitment process. Solving these challenges would allow organizations to find the right candidates quick. If you're a hiring manager who is quite new to recruitment, we will also be covering some basics on, the recruitment process as a whole. Sorry. So these are the top 5 common challenges that we'll talk about today. As a hiring manager, we often assume that HR knows who I want to hire. Okay, sourcing is purely HR's job. There must be other better candidates out there. I know what I don't want, but I'm still figuring out what I want. And lastly, candidates need the job more than I need them. So these are the most common challenges that we see. And let's look at the whole process. This is a common recruitment process for most companies. So as a hiring manager, we will submit a requisition form to the HR when we need to hire. So in general, these are the steps that will happen after that. Based on the requirements, the HR would start the sourcing process. So sourcing here means that the HR would either post a job advertisement or search for the candidates using resume search. This is where sometimes it can get a bit tedious when the hiring manager only relies on the job description to communicate what they want. When the expectation is unclear or not specific, the candidate sourced by the recruiter may turn out to be not so satisfactory, and valuable time will be wasted in this process. Finally, after getting through resumes, hiring manager would shortlist the candidate for interview. So in each of this stage, we tend to make certain assumptions that may hinder the process. We'll look at each of these assumptions and how we can improve them. Assumption number 1, HR knows who I want to hire. So let's look at the common scenario. When I was a hiring manager, I rely on my HR or recruiter on pretty much everything, and I expect my HR to give me what I want. So I will fill up the form and maybe send them a job description. And most of the time, my job description is from a previous job, or it's a generic job description that was handed to me. So they may be outdated, but I always assume that, job descriptions are pretty standard, so it doesn't really matter. And I would always rush my recruiter for some resumes because I need a head count quickly. So this is what I'll say to my recruiter. I've emailed you the standard job description for my position. When can you get back to me with some resumes? So my recruiter would normally reply, I'll post a job and get back to you in a week. We'll see what we have. And my recruiter would normally reply to me or come back to me after a week. She would normally wait for enough resumes before starting to shortlist them. And I would always assume that, what I have shared is good enough for the recruiter to get me some good candidates. So in my mind, even though I have some preferences and I sort of just assume that, the recruiter would understand what I want and they would think along the same line. So for example, maybe on top of the standard requirements stated at the job description, maybe I'm looking for a more ambitious person because I have succession planning in mind. So I may want to groom a person to take over certain roles, right? However, to my recruiter, he or she may just look for candidates or may just source based on a standard job description, which is, to look for any candidate that fits what is written on the job description. So it turns out that, while both our assumptions are not really wrong, I mean, the recruiters are still able to get some candidates, but because we're not quite aligned, it can be a problem. And in my encounters with different clients, it is common for recruiters to tell me that they are looking for a good salesperson, for example. And I always wonder, what do they mean by good, right? So I would always ask more specific questions and try to understand, more specific criteria. Let me illustrate a bit more on how a gap can exist even if both parties are looking at the same job description. So when we hire, most of the time we're looking at the three different competencies here: knowledge, skills, and attitude. So assuming that these competencies are spelled out in the job description, the recruiter may take each competency with equal importance. So if I just look at the job description, I would just assume that, okay, I need this person to have, like, I will place 1/3 importance on knowledge, and then 1/3 on skill, and 1/3 on attitude. Okay. And you know, uh, let's talk about a scenario. So during one of the visits to a client, we met the sales manager, and he was hiring a new sales team, and he told us his requirement for the people that he would like to hire. So their initial plan was to hire fresh graduates with, good attitude. But after we discuss and understand more about the situation of the team and the job, we realized that, because this is a new sales team, they would need to first hire a more senior sales exec first to, stabilize the team, and perhaps for someone to guide the newbies who come in later. So we had the sales manager sit down with the recruiter to relook at the hiring plan. So first, they would hire more experienced sales executive with perhaps strong negotiation skills. Then, thereafter, when the core team is more established, they can then expand the team further by going for, fresh grads with good attitudes. So we can see from this example that even though we are hiring for the same sales executive with almost the same job description, the competency that we are aiming for may be slightly different. So some hiring managers, they may value attitude more than skills. It depends. So let's ask again, does HR really know what the hiring manager want in the hire? The solution to this assumption can easily be solved with a 20-minute discussion. Try to initiate a meeting where the HR and the hiring manager sit down to define the scope and align expectations together. When I was a hiring manager, I often tell my HR the position that I'm trying to fill, and rely on them to give me a standard job description. I think it was not really fair for the HR because they do not really know what I want and what I had in mind. So after sitting down with the recruiter for 15 minutes, and I can see that the quality of shortlisted candidates really improved. And I have to admit that it was also my fault in the first place because I was not being very specific with my requirements. Okay, let's talk about challenge number 2. Sourcing is HR's job. This is quite true in some of the companies we visited. In some organizations, recruitment is seen solely as the HR's responsibility. It's quite common for hiring managers to expect HR to do all the sourcing and all the processing, right? And as a hiring manager, my only concern is to look at good profiles and interview them as soon as I can. So I would always ask the HR for more suitable or more better candidates. Are there any more resumes for this position that I'm looking for? And sometimes my recruiter would look at me helplessly and say, I've sent you everything that I've shortlisted. That usually leaves me quite speechless because I always think that, it's the HR's job to get me good candidates. While it is the HR's job to help the hiring managers source for good candidates. Everyone in the organization or the team plays an important role too. When a position is not filled, it affects not just the HR's KPI, but more importantly, it affects the team and the company's performance. The right focus should be to work together in order to fill the position quickly. Let's say I'm a sales manager. When I'm understaffed, I'm usually stressed out as well. So to me, most vacancies are very, very urgent. So you may ask, or you may wonder why a hiring manager is always so stressed out and why are they always pressuring the HR or the recruiters, right? So if I'm the hiring manager, I would be stressed because I'm one or two men down and I will still have to hit the monthly sales target. And it is not very likely that my country manager would reduce my target just because a few people resign. So I have to either take it up myself or I would have to load those targets to other team members. And because of that, the team members feel stressed as well, and they would become demotivated. So you can imagine how this can easily turn into a bad cycle, right? So the solution here, the best way is, for hiring manager and the HR to work hand in hand so that, we can hire faster. It doesn't matter whose job it is to hire. When everyone plays a part in recruitment, the company as a whole can win. And remember, again, everyone is a recruiter. So in the future, the conversation should go like this. The hiring manager would ask, are there any more resumes for my position? And for the HR, as a partner to the hiring manager, the HR would say, yes, I've retrieved a few candidates from talent search for you because since you have sent over all the candidates that you have shortlisted, right? So another way to quickly get more options would be from talent search. But this time, the HR would also encourage the hiring manager to come into the system and process the candidates or to run talent search together. When the hiring manager is granted access to Siva Recruitment Center, both parties can work together to screen and shortlist much faster, and the hiring manager now has a better understanding of the talent market condition as well. So it's a win-win outcome. Okay, challenge number 3. This is an interesting assumption. There must be better candidates out there. I think it's common for people to think that, if we search hard enough or if we search long enough, we will be able to find an even better candidates. It's just like when you go online shopping, right? Maybe on Amazon.com or Lazada.com, you would have the experience of, browsing or shopping with some idea in mind. Maybe you're trying to find a pair of shoes or a dress, but you found yourself scrolling endlessly on and on, even if you have found the pair of shoes that is quite suitable. And this is what I call the fear of missing out. We always try to endlessly shop or search in this case because in our mind, we try to find the best candidate and we do not want to miss out. Okay. In a hiring manager's mind, we are always thinking, I want to hire the best talent because it is easy to hire, but it is not so easy to get rid of the staff if I have hired a non-performer, right? And when my recruiter shows me some resumes, sometimes I would say, this candidate looks quite okay, but I think I'll wait for someone better. And the recruiter would continue to hunt for candidates for me. And 2 weeks later, maybe I feel that I've seen enough resumes and I'm ready to make a decision. And then I tell my recruiter, okay, maybe I'll meet the 3 candidates from last week, only to find out that it's too late. These candidates have taken other job offers. So in recruitment, timing and timeliness is crucial. Good candidates always have options. So do encourage our candidates, do engage our candidates timely and seize the right one immediately as soon as you see the profile, right? When we are more responsive to job applicants, we can actually engage them better. Let's not keep our candidates waiting for too long, because if they are good candidates, our recruiters or companies would be eyeing on them as well. This also means that we should not accumulate job applicants for a few weeks before shortlisting them. If we feel that the candidate fits the job, engage them as soon as you can. Okay, moving on to challenge number 4. I know what I don't want. Here's a scenario that you may encounter in your office daily. So when it comes to lunchtime, the first question that we ask would be, what to eat. And most of the time, someone would say anything. And so maybe you suggest fast food, right? And then someone would say, I don't want fast food. So maybe you give another suggestion. How about Japanese food? Only to be turned down again. So how many of you have experienced this before? Maybe with your colleague or with your spouse. I call this the I know what I don't want syndrome. Okay, and this happens a lot with hiring as well. As a hiring manager, we tend to be able to share better on what we don't like about a candidate. And what we should do is to be specific with our requirements and also provide clear reasons behind your decision to accept or reject a candidate. Here's a case study on a company. The recruiter shared with us that the applicants from job advertisement was not good enough, and because of this, the hiring manager had rejected over 20 resumes already. So to understand further, we met up with the hiring manager and clarified on her requirements. And it turned out that, the hiring manager wanted an accountant with a minimum experience of 4 years, but she did not really specify on on her requirement for the 4 years. So actually what she wanted was someone who has been with the same job for 3 years or more, because she does not want to hire a job hopper. Okay, so upon understanding this, they were able to find the right candidate for this hiring manager. So next time when a resume gets rejected by the hiring manager or by your hiring manager, please ask the question, why not? Okay. Now let's go to challenge number 5. We always think that candidates need the job more than we need them. When it comes to the interview, some hiring managers still have a conventional mentality that candidates are the only ones who need the job more, right? I mean, it's traditionally, we would assume that candidates are the one more eager to please because they want the job, right? And because of this mentality, sometimes the interviewer would appear to be intimidating or even arrogant. The question is this really the case today, or is this still the case today? Because things are changing. The interview session with a candidate is actually like a matchmaking session. So instead of it's actually like more like matchmaking instead of interrogation, right? And the questions like why should I hire you may sound a bit too bossy or a bit too authoritative and would be difficult for the candidates to reply. Some candidates may be turned off with such questions, and this doesn't really help the interview session to move forward. While we evaluate the candidates, remember that candidates are also evaluating us. Always remember a candidate's onboarding experience starts from the day he comes in for the interview. Okay, so the solution here is simple. During the start of any interview session, I would normally warm up the candidate by starting with some simple or maybe friendly questions. For example, you can say something like, thank you for making the time. I like your experience in this area. We are a market leader, so the opportunity for expansion is huge. Can you tell me more about the project that you're working on now? By saying this, candidates can usually tell you easily about things that are more familiar with they are more familiar with, or things that they are passionate about. You can still insert some tougher questions in the end, but the candidate would be able to share and perform better when they are more comfortable with you. After all, the objective of an interview is to assess the person's true ability, right? So, how can JobStreet help HR and hiring managers work together? We believe that the involvement of hiring managers in recruitment is really really important. Therefore, we are always building products that allow hiring manager and the HR to collaborate and work together. Here's an ideal recruitment process. Most hiring starts with job requisition. Next, the HR and hiring manager would have a meeting to align and set expectations. This is where we can nail down, the must-have criteria, set some realistic expectations, and also talk about unwritten preferences. This discussion is very important because it sets the foundation for the recruiter to search for the right candidate later. Okay, thereafter, we are ready to source for candidates. We can post an advertisement or turn to talent search to proactively, search for candidates. When we have a pool of candidates, we can start processing. So in this stage, do include the hiring manager so that decisions can be made quickly without any delay. And this is a recommended flow. First, HR would shortlist the job applicant for the hiring manager in the system. This way, the hiring manager doesn't really need to spend a lot of time going through the hundreds of applicants who may or may not be relevant. And then the hiring manager would come in and look at the shortlisted candidates and make a quick decision to interview or to reject this applicant. Once the decision is made, the HR can then quickly engage the candidate for interview. And in the Siva Recruitment Center, we have digitalized this whole process for you. That way, the hiring managers who are often very busy or, if they are often not in the office, they can access the resumes online and make a quick decision. If you're still relying on, hard copies or emails to process candidates, you can explore more on how you can speed up this process using our system. Okay. And let's look at some snapshots of the collaboration tool in Siva Recruitment Center. So today, HR will be able to easily invite hiring managers to view and manage candidates related to their roles. And the job ad page, so when you go to your system, when you look at the job ad page, just click on collaborate and assign the job to the hiring manager that you would like to collaborate with. And this makes the processing much easier for, busy hiring managers. Okay, I hope you're able to relate to the scenarios that were shared earlier. To sum it up, these are the key takeaways and actions. First, be clear with who you want to hire so that both parties can work in sync. Have a 20 minutes discussion, to align the requirements, and this 20-minute will be a worthy investment of your time because it will save you a lot more time in the long run. Okay. Secondly, be involved in the recruitment process. So we are talking about hiring managers here. Everyone is a recruiter, so regardless if you are a recruiter, a hiring manager, or even a receptionist who greets the candidates during interview, right? Everyone plays a role in the recruitment process. Okay, lastly, be decisive in your selection. Once you found someone that matches what you're looking for, engage your candidates immediately and invite them for an interview. Remember, an interview is a matchmaking session and the assessment actually goes both ways. Okay, now if you have any questions, you can type in your question now. Okay, just type into the chat box and make sure you address the question to all organizers. Okay, if you have any more questions later, right, or anything at all that you would like to it answered, do drop us a line at all these email address from different country. Okay, our customer representative will be able to help you with that. Okay, thank you very much for your time and thanks for joining me today. And after you end this session, we will have a feedback form for you to fill up. So feel free to give us your honest feedback so that we can improve further. Okay, I wish you a great day ahead and happy hiring. Thank you.